My mama ain't obligated to wait on you hand and foot. He said it without looking up from his phone. She stood in the living room, C-section stitches still burning, holding a 6-pound baby and 3 unwashed bottles. She didn't argue. She packed a suitcase instead. 90 days after Naomi Carter walked out of a midtown Atlanta townhouse with a newborn and a suitcase held together by a broken zipper, 2 people came to bring her back. Her husband and his mother. They carried fruit baskets and formula and smiles that looked like they'd been refrigerated overnight. When the door opened, they expected tears. They expected gratitude. They expected a woman too exhausted and too broke to say anything but yes. What they found was a woman standing upright in a clean doorway, her daughter on her hip, and a man they'd never seen before holding a warm bottle in the kitchen behind her. The baby looked at Marcus Thompson, her biological father, and turned her face into her mother's neck. She did not reach for him. She did not know his smell. 42 nights. That's how many times Naomi heated formula at 3 a.m, with a C-section incision still pulling at her skin, while her mother-in-law slept 10 feet away behind a locked bedroom door watching television reruns. 42 nights of bleeding through gauze and rocking a baby who wouldn't stop crying, in an apartment she'd paid for with her parents' retirement money, beside a man who told her his mother had no obligation to help. She didn't scream. She didn't beg. She zipped a suitcase that was older than her marriage, tucked her daughter into a blanket, and walked out. Here is the question I need you to sit with tonight. If the person who promised to love you was quietly planning to take everything you own, your home, your savings, even your child, how many silent nights would you endure before the silence became the thing that destroyed you? To understand how Naomi Carter ended up standing in that doorway, you need to go back to the beginning. Back to a house in College Park, where a magnolia tree has been growing longer than anyone on the block can remember. There is a house in College Park, just south of Atlanta, where a magnolia tree has been growing in the front yard for longer than anyone on the block can remember. The roots have cracked the sidewalk in 2 places. Nobody has fixed it. Nobody wants to. The cracks are part of the house now, like the screen door that doesn't close all the way, like the smell of Lorraine Carter's cornbread drifting out the kitchen window every Sunday morning before church. Robert Carter bought that house in 1989, with money he saved working the sorting floor at the Hateville post office. 30 years of 5 a.m. starts. 30 years of standing on concrete until his knees gave out and the doctors told him to stop, and he didn't stop for another 4 years after that. Lorraine kept the books, kept the garden, kept the choir at Mount Zion Baptist running on time and on key. They raised 1 daughter in that house. Just 1. Naomi. There was a suitcase in Naomi's closet growing up, a hard-shell Samsonite her grandmother had given her before she passed. Maroon, scuffed at the corners, with a brass latch that stuck if you didn't lift and press at the same time. It sat on the top shelf between a box of church programs and a stack of yearbooks, and nobody touched it for years at a time. But it was always there. Part of the room the way the magnolia was part of the yard. Naomi took that suitcase to college. She took it to her first apartment. And the summer she married Marcus Thompson, she carried it one last time into the townhouse on Peachtree Hills Avenue and pushed it to the back of the bedroom closet. She wouldn't need it again. That was the plan. The down payment on that townhouse was $90,000. Robert Carter's hands shook when he signed the wire transfer. That was not a metaphor. His hands physically shook because that check was 30 years of concrete floors and holiday shifts and the 1 vacation to Hilton Head they'd taken in 2011 and never repeated. Lorraine sat beside him at the kitchen table and said nothing. She had already said everything she needed to say in the bedroom that morning, with the door closed, where Naomi couldn't hear. Robert signed anyway. "This is for your future, baby girl," he said. He did not say what it cost him. He did not need to. Marcus Thompson had a smile that started slow and finished wide, the kind that made you feel like you were the only person in the room. He put $15,000 toward the down payment. His mother, Dorothy Thompson, loaned another $15,000. She wrote an IOU on a piece of yellow legal paper in handwriting that leaned hard to the right. Received $15,000 loan from son Marcus Thompson for house down or payment. Signed, Dorothy Thompson. She handed it to Marcus. He put it in a drawer. Nobody mentioned it to Naomi. The mortgage was in both their names. Everything looked balanced on paper. Paper is patient. Paper will hold any lie you write on it. 3 months before the baby came, Dorothy drove up from Macon in a Buick, loaded with casserole dishes and opinions. She was 58, recently widowed. Marcus's father had died of a stroke 8 years earlier, and she had been telling anyone who would listen that she raised that boy alone, and he owed her everything. She arrived with a peach cobbler and a smile that did not reach her eyes. "I'm here to help with my grandbaby," she said. That first night, she sat at the dinner table and told Naomi, "Back in my day, we didn't have all this fuss. Had the baby, went right back to the field." She laughed after she said it. Nobody else did. But there was something that happened before Dorothy arrived. Something Naomi would not understand until much later. They had met junior year at Georgia State. Thursday night study group. He walked her to her car afterward, the parking lot empty except for the two of them and the hum of a streetlight that flickered twice every minute. "I'm gonna give you the life you deserve, baby," he said, without looking at her directly. She believed him the way you believe the ground will hold you when you step outside in the morning. They married 2 years after graduation. 5 tables, a rented dress, a thin gold band. 7 months into the marriage, Marcus came home with a document. 2 pages, printed, with a signature line at the bottom. "Company thing, babe. They're offering a housing tax credit for married employees. Just need your signature." Naomi was at the dining table, laptop open, a campaign pitch due at 8 the next morning. She glanced at the pages. "You sure it's nothing weird?" Marcus tilted his head. "Girl, would I do something to hurt you? Just sign it." "HR's been on me all week," she signed. He kissed her forehead. The document disappeared into his briefcase. That document was a postnuptial agreement. It stated that in the event of divorce, the townhouse would be classified as Marcus Thompson's individual property. Naomi would receive 10% of the home's assessed value, roughly $28,000. The remaining equity, including the $90,000 her parents had contributed, would belong to Marcus. Naomi did not know this. She would not know for another 14 months. The baby came on a Tuesday in January. C-section. 6 pounds, 3 ounces. A girl. They named her Amara. Dorothy looked at the baby once in the hospital. "A girl," she said. She turned and walked back to the waiting room. She did not hold her. Marcus stayed at the hospital that first night. He held the baby in the blue blanket and smiled with his whole face. "You did good, babe," he whispered. It was the last soft thing he would say to her for 42 days. The stitches were still fresh when the silence began. Dorothy's knees went bad on day 2. Bad enough to stay in bed until noon. Bad enough to need a nap by 2. But miraculously recovered by 6 every evening when the church social bus pulled up. Marcus went back to work on day 4. Naomi called him on day 20 when her incision turned red and hot, and her temperature climbed to 101. "I'm in a meeting," he said. She took an Uber to urgent care alone, the baby strapped to her chest, the driver glancing in the rearview mirror but saying nothing. Day 40, 2 in the morning. Amara would not stop crying. Naomi walked the dark living room, back and forth, the incision pulling with each step, her arms shaking from exhaustion. Dorothy opened her bedroom door. Not to help. To complain. "Can't you keep that baby quiet? Some of us are trying to sleep." She closed the door again. The television resumed behind it. Naomi stood in the living room holding her daughter, and for one moment, one terrible, honest moment, She looked at the balcony railing. The thought passed. Amara fell asleep on her shoulder, mouth open, breath warm against Naomi's neck. They went inside. Day 42. 3 unwashed bottles on the counter. Formula crust yellowing on the rims. Naomi asked Marcus to ask his mother to wash one. Just one. He did not look up from his phone. His thumb kept scrolling. My mama ain't obligated to wait on you hand and foot. She stood there for 3 seconds. The room was perfectly still. Tyler Perry's voice leaked through Dorothy's door like gas through a crack. Okay, Naomi said. She went to the bedroom. She pulled the maroon Samsonite from the back of the closet. The zipper caught. She yanked it. It ripped open with a sound like tearing fabric, which is exactly what it was. She packed diapers, onesies, formula, bottles. For herself, she took 3 changes of clothes. Nothing else. Marcus appeared in the doorway. What are you doing? She did not answer. Naomi, stop being dramatic. She picked up the baby. She picked up the suitcase. She walked past him. He grabbed the door frame, but not her arm. You leave. Don't come crawling back. She walked down the hallway, past the family photos on the wall, past the kitchen where 3 bottles still sat unwashed. She opened the front door. The porch light was off. The street was empty. She caught her reflection in the glass storm door as it swung shut. Tangled hair, oversized sleep shirt, a baby wrapped in a cotton blanket, and a suitcase with a broken zipper held shut by one hand. She looked at that reflection for 1 second. Then she walked to her car. What Naomi had when she walked through her parents' front door at 1:14 in the morning, a 6-week-old baby, a suitcase full of diapers, $12,000 in a savings account, Marcus didn't know existed, and 2 parents who asked no questions and made no speeches. Robert carried the suitcase inside. Lorraine took the baby. The sheets in Naomi's old bedroom had already been changed. Lorraine had done it before getting in the car. She ironed them too. Old habit. The room still had Naomi's college diploma on the wall and a faded Beyoncé poster from 2008. It smelled like lavender dryer sheets and something that had no name but meant safe. That first night, Naomi woke at 3 a.m. by reflex. Her body was already standing before her mind caught up. She walked to the kitchen to heat a bottle. The bottle was already warm. Her mother had set it on the counter 10 minutes earlier. Naomi stood in the dark kitchen, hands still reaching, and realized she did not have to do this alone anymore. That was when she cried. The first time in 42 days. The crying lasted 6 minutes. She timed it later because the microwave clock was in her line of sight, 3:07 to 3:13. Then she washed her face, picked up the bottle, and went back to her daughter. The incision still pulled when she sat down. The gauze still needed changing twice a day. She ate what Lorraine put in front of her. She did not taste it. She slept in 90-minute intervals, waking each time to a silence that still surprised her. No television bleeding through walls, no locked doors, no one telling her she was on her own. Her body had not caught up to the fact that the worst part was over. Marcus called the next afternoon. You done with this tantrum yet? The baby still needs to be registered. There's paperwork. She'll be registered under Carter, Naomi said. My name. Naomi. Have you lost your mind? I found it. That's the problem. She blocked his number. Then she blocked Dorothy's. Then she blocked his secondary Instagram account. The silence that followed was the cleanest sound she had heard in 6 weeks. But the silence didn't last. Dorothy's sister, Marcus's aunt, showed up a week later with a gift basket and a voice dripping with honey. Baby, come home. A child needs her daddy. Marcus said he's sorry. Dorothy said he's sorry. Let bygones be bygones. Naomi stood in the doorway and did not move aside. Tell Marcus to come say it himself. The aunt left with the gift basket. Then came the cousin. Then a church friend of Dorothy's, who had driven 40 minutes from Macon to deliver a speech about the sanctity of marriage. Then a text from a number Naomi didn't recognize. "You really gonna tear apart a family over a few dirty bottles?" Naomi screenshotted each message. She did not respond to any of them. She saved them in a folder on her phone labeled Receipts. On day 55, Naomi sat across from attorney Denise Walker in an office on Peachtree Center Avenue. Walker was 53, wore gold-rimmed glasses, and had the kind of stillness that made anxious people calm and dishonest people nervous. She listened to Naomi for 40 minutes without interrupting. Then she laid out the numbers. The retainer was $12,000. Naomi looked at the figure on the paper. $12,000. Every dollar she had saved in 2 years of performance bonuses and freelance marketing work that Marcus never knew about. Her escape fund. Her emergency net. The money that stood between her and having absolutely nothing at all. She signed the retainer agreement on a Thursday afternoon. When the pen left the paper, she was broke. Not figuratively. Literally. Her checking account held $311. Her savings held $0. She had bet everything, every bonus she'd hidden, every freelance check she'd deposited into an account Marcus didn't know existed, every dollar she'd scraped together while pretending she wasn't planning for the day she might need to leave, on a legal system that might not believe her. Robert offered to cover it. "Baby girl, let me write the check." She said no. "Daddy, you already wrote the last check. This one's mine." That was the act of giving, not charity, not generosity. Sacrifice. She gave her entire safety net to a fight she might lose, because the alternative was spending the rest of her life pretending she hadn't been robbed in her own home. 3 weeks after leaving, a message arrived on Instagram from an account with a cartoon rabbit avatar. "Mrs. Thompson, I work with your husband. There's something you need to know." The sender's name was Simone Park, 26. Junior associate at Marcus's tech firm. Korean American. She had no reason to reach out. She had every reason not to. They met at a coffee shop in Decatur on a Wednesday afternoon. Simone arrived 10 minutes early and sat with her back to the wall. Her hands trembled when she slid a manila envelope across the table. "At the company retreat last month, he was drunk. He said he married you because your family had money. He said when your parents retired, you stopped being useful." She paused. Her coffee was untouched. "He told people he had a postnup that would leave you with nothing. He said, and I'm quoting, 'She'll walk away empty-handed, and I'll keep the house.'" "There's more," Simone said. "He's been asking legal how to reclassify the $15,000 from his mother. He wants to prove it was a gift, not a loan. If it's a gift, it counts as marital property. If it's a loan, it's his separate debt." Naomi looked at the envelope. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because I heard what he said about your daughter." Simone's voice cracked. He said, "The girl, Naomi can have her. Mama wants a grandson anyway." Simone opened the door, but she could not walk through it with Naomi. "I can't testify," she said. "I'll lose my job." She left the coffee shop without looking back. The envelope stayed on the table. That night, Naomi sat in her childhood bedroom with the door closed and opened the envelope. Bank records showing transfers she'd never been told about. Chat screenshots from a company messaging platform. A photograph of the handwritten IOU, Dorothy's $15,000 loan in her own handwriting, and a printed exchange between Marcus and someone listed only as L. Davis-esque. Marcus asking how to forge a gift letter. The attorney advising him to have Dorothy write a backdated statement claiming the money was a gift, not a loan. Marcus replying, "Done." There was something else in the envelope. A USB drive. Naomi plugged it into her laptop. One audio file. She pressed play. Marcus's voice, restaurant noise behind him. "She's got postpartum depression. I've seen her medical records. If it comes down to it, I can argue she's mentally unfit to have custody." A woman's voice. "You'd really do that?" Marcus, I'd do whatever it takes to keep the house. Naomi sat in front of the screen for a long time after the recording ended. The magnolia tree outside the window was dropping its last petals of the season. They fell slowly, turning once in the air before landing on the cracked sidewalk where the roots had broken through. She forwarded everything to Denise Walker. The subject line read, "He wants to play. I'll play to the end." I want to stop here for a moment, because this is the part of the story that nobody talks about. Not the betrayal itself. We've all seen betrayal. But the man who sat in a study at 11 o'clock at night, reading Georgia divorce statutes online with a magnifying glass held up to the screen because his bifocals weren't strong enough for the small print. The man who filed every receipt, every wire transfer confirmation, every scrap of paper with a number on it, because somewhere in his gut, he knew that the boy with the beautiful smile might not be what he seemed. Robert Carter didn't save his daughter with a speech. He didn't save her with money. She'd already given that away. He saved her with a filing cabinet and 30 years of not trusting anyone who told him not to worry. That's what I want you to hold. Robert Carter, meanwhile, had been busy in his own way. He pulled a manila folder from the steel filing cabinet in his study. The one Lorraine joked was older than Naomi and twice as stubborn. Inside that folder, copies of every document Naomi had ever signed since her 18th birthday. High school diploma, college transcripts, marriage certificate, and one document he'd copied without telling anyone, the postnuptial agreement Marcus had brought home 7 months into the marriage. It looked off, Robert said, when Denise Walker asked him how he'd known. So I made a copy. But Marcus had not been idle. And what he was building, a cage of forged documents and staged photographs and weaponized medical records, would not reveal its full shape until a Tuesday morning in a Fulton County courtroom. We will get there. He hired Lester Davis, a man known in certain Atlanta circles for the kind of legal work that left marks but no fingerprints. Within 2 weeks, Davis had someone following Naomi. Photographs appeared. Naomi meeting Denise Walker at a cafe. Naomi talking to Elijah Brooks, Walker's paralegal, outside the law office on Peachtree Center Avenue. The angles were chosen carefully. Shot from across the street, through car windows, from positions that turned professional meetings into something that looked intimate. Marcus texted from a new number. I show these to a judge. Say you were stepping out on me. See what happens to your custody case. Naomi read the text. She did not reply. She forwarded it to Denise Walker with a single note. Add this to the file. A week later, a second anonymous package arrived at the Carter house. No return address. Inside, another USB drive. Another recording. Marcus talking to a woman about Naomi's medical records. His voice, clear as tap water. Postpartum depression. That's my ace. If she pushes too hard, I pull that card and take the kid. Naomi listened to it once. She did not listen again. She sent it to Denise Walker within the hour. The pieces of Marcus's plan were coming into focus now each week, revealing another layer, like peeling wallpaper off a wall and finding older, darker wallpaper underneath. The postnup designed to steal the house. The gift letter scheme to erase Dorothy's loan. The staged photographs to manufacture infidelity. The weaponized medical records to take the child. Each piece separate. Each piece connected. Each piece designed to leave Naomi Carter with nothing, no home, no savings, no daughter, no credibility. Robert Carter, meanwhile, had been busy in his own way. He pulled a manila folder from the steel filing cabinet in his study. The one Lorraine joked was older than Naomi and twice as stubborn. Inside that folder, copies of every document Naomi had ever signed since her 18th birthday. High school diploma, college transcripts, marriage certificate, and one document he'd copied without telling anyone, the postnuptial agreement Marcus had brought home 7 months into the marriage. It looked off, Robert said, when Denise Walker asked him how he'd known. So I made a copy. He had not told Naomi. He had not told Marcus. He had not told Lorraine until after Naomi left. He had simply done what 30 years at the post office had taught him. When something looks wrong, you keep a record. The meeting happened at a coffee shop near Naomi's parents' house on a Thursday morning. Marcus chose it. He arrived in a pressed navy suit, hair freshly cut, cuff links catching the light from the window. He looked like a man about to close a deal. He sat down across from Naomi and smiled the smile she had once loved, the one that started slow and finished wide. "So," he said, "let's talk about the house. The house is mine." He said it flatly, like reading a number off a page. "I have a postnup. Signed by you. Legal and binding." He paused. He straightened his cufflink. "The baby, you can have her. I don't need her. But the house stays with me." Naomi looked at him. She studied his face, the way you study a photograph of someone you used to know, searching for the version that existed before this one. "Marcus," she said, "we were married for 2 years. We loved each other for 4. Does it really have to end like this?" He leaned back. "You're the one who wanted a divorce. I'm just protecting what's mine." "What's yours?" She repeated it. The words tasted like copper. "And if you push this to court, I've got pictures of you with another man. I've got your medical records showing you were mentally unfit after the baby. I've got everything I need to make sure you walk out of that courtroom with nothing." The coffee shop was quiet. A barista wiped a counter in slow circles. An old man near the window turned a page of his newspaper and didn't look up. Outside, a city bus passed with a hiss of brakes. "Are you threatening me?" Naomi asked. "I'm telling you how it is." She looked at him for a long time. His eyes were steady. His jaw was set. There was a time when that jaw made her feel safe. Now it made her feel like she was sitting across from a stranger wearing a mask she had once mistaken for a face. What Marcus did not know, could not have known, was that Denise Walker had already heard that recording 3 times. And she was not a woman who needed to hear something 4 times. "Okay," Naomi said. She stood up. "See you in court." "Naomi." His voice went hard. "I'm giving you a chance. You walk away now, you get nothing." "I already have nothing, Marcus. You made sure of that 42 nights ago." She left. The coffee shop door closed behind her, with a soft chime that sounded like the period at the end of a sentence. She drove home. She did not turn on the radio. The silence in the car was different from the silence in the townhouse. This one belonged to her. She pulled into her parents' driveway and sat with the engine running. Through the living room window, she could see her father in his chair. Her mother was in the kitchen, she could tell by the light. She turned off the engine. She went inside. S6. The hearing was scheduled for a Tuesday morning at the Fulton County Superior Court. Naomi did not sleep the night before. At 5:15, Lorraine came downstairs, poured herself a cup of coffee, and sat next to her daughter without speaking. They stayed like that until the sun cleared the magnolia tree. Naomi wore a white blouse and navy slacks, her hair pulled back tight. She sat next to Denise Walker, whose gold-rimmed glasses caught the courtroom light every time she turned a page. Marcus sat across the aisle in the same navy suit. Lester Davis beside him, briefcase on his lap. Dorothy Thompson sat in the gallery behind them, clutching her purse like a flotation device, her mouth set in a line that she probably believed looked dignified. Denise Walker stood. She did not raise her voice. She did not gesture. She laid the evidence out like a carpenter laying floor tiles one piece at a time, fitted tight, no gaps. First, the wire transfer from Robert Carter's savings account. $90,000. Sent March 14th, 2 years prior. Annotated in Robert's own handwriting on the confirmation receipt. Down payment for Naomi's home. Second, the postnuptial agreement. Signed by Naomi Carter. Denise Walker held up two documents side by side. On the left, the original agreement, 2 pages. Dense legal language, no witness signature, no notary seal. On the right, the copy Robert Carter had kept. He had photocopied it from the shared drawer the same week Marcus brought it home, because 30 years at the post office had taught him that any document worth signing was worth keeping a copy of. Denise Walker turned to the judge. Your Honor, this document is a postnuptial agreement, a complex legal instrument with serious implications for property rights. Yet it bears no signature from independent counsel representing Mrs. Carter. There is no evidence she received legal advice. There is no evidence she understood she was signing a property division agreement. The respondent told her it was a company tax form. Under Georgia law, a postnuptial agreement obtained without informed consent and without independent legal counsel may be deemed void. Third, the IOU. Dorothy Thompson's handwriting on yellow legal paper. Received $15,000 loan from son Marcus Thompson. Loan, not gift. The words sat on the page like a stone. Fourth, bank records showing Marcus had recently transferred $15,000 back to Dorothy, an attempt to erase the debt trail. Alongside it, a screenshot from the company messaging platform. Marcus to Lester Davis. I can have my mama write a new letter saying it was a gift. She'll do it. Davis's reply. Get it done. Make sure the dates match. Marcus's face went the color of old cement. He turned to Davis. Davis did not look at him. Then Denise Walker pressed play on the first USB recording. Marcus's voice filled the courtroom. Casual restaurant noise behind it. She's got postpartum depression. I've seen her medical records. If it comes down to it, I can argue she's mentally unfit to have custody. The silence that followed was not empty. It was full. It was the silence of 26 people in a courtroom understanding something all at once. A woman in the second row put her hand over her mouth. A man near the back uncrossed his arms. The court reporter's fingers paused over the keys for 2 full seconds before resuming. Nobody had told them to react. Their bodies did it for them. The recording continued. Marcus's voice, looser now, a laugh behind the words, married her because her family had money. Now her daddy's retired. What's the point? Dorothy Thompson's hands tightened on her purse. The clasp made a small, sharp sound. Fifth, the threatening text messages. Marcus to Naomi, sent from the new number. I show these to a judge. Say you were stepping out on me. See what happens to your custody case. Alongside it, the staged photographs of Naomi meeting her own attorney and paralegal, shot from angles deliberately chosen to suggest an intimacy that did not exist. Denise Walker set the folder down and looked at the judge. Your Honor, the petitioner seeks equitable distribution of the marital home based on verified financial contributions, sole custody of the minor child who remains in the breastfeeding period, and a finding that the postnuptial agreement is void due to fraud and absence of informed consent. The judge looked at Marcus Thompson. It was not a long look. It did not need to be. Marcus tried to speak. His attorney put a hand on his arm. Marcus shook it off. That recording was obtained illegally. The recording was provided anonymously to my client, Denise Walker said, still standing. Georgia is a one-party consent state for recordings made in public spaces. The recording was captured at a restaurant during a company event. Marcus's mouth opened, then closed, then opened again. He looked like a man pulled from water not because of cruelty, but because the air he was breathing was no longer the air he was designed for. Because what Marcus and Dorothy and Lester Davis did not know what nobody in the room knew until Walker's paralegal stood and handed the judge that final document was that Marcus's own company had begun an internal investigation. During the discovery process, Walker's contacts in corporate law had flagged irregularities in Marcus's expense reports. Personal charges, dinners, clothing, a resort weekend in Savannah billed to the company account for 14 months. The company had already begun termination proceedings. Marcus did not know this yet. The trap he had set for Naomi, the postnup obtained by fraud, the backdated gift letter, the staged photographs, the weaponized medical records, all of it required him to appear in court as a credible, honest party. The evidence destroyed that credibility. And the expense fraud, once entered into the record, destroyed the rest. He had built the cage himself. He just hadn't realized he was standing inside it. Phones came up across the gallery. The court reporter typed steadily, but her eyes, if you were watching closely, moved to Naomi Carter and stayed there for 3 full seconds before returning to the keys. The judge spoke in clear, unhurried language. The postnuptial agreement was void due to fraud and absence of informed consent. The marital home would be subject to equitable distribution based on verified financial contributions. Naomi Carter was granted sole custody of the minor child. Marcus Thompson was ordered to pay temporary spousal support pending the final decree. Marcus sat perfectly still. Dorothy made a sound, not a word, not a cry. Something caught between the two and pressed her purse against her chest. Lester Davis began packing his briefcase before the judge finished speaking. Within 90 days of the ruling, Marcus Thompson lost his job. He could not pay the mortgage alone. The townhouse went to sale. After debts and legal fees, what remained was divided according to documented contribution. Naomi's parents received the bulk of their $90,000 back. Not all of it, but enough. Marcus received what the court determined was fair, which was considerably less than what a fraudulent postnuptial agreement had promised him. He moved back to Macon. Dorothy took him in. The Buick was still in the driveway. But before the ruling was entered into record, before Marcus Thompson walked out of that courtroom for the last time, there was a moment that settled the only question that truly mattered, and it did not happen in front of a judge. Day 90. Marcus and Dorothy drove to College Park. They parked on the street in front of the Carter house, beneath the magnolia tree whose roots had cracked the sidewalk. They walked to the door carrying fruit baskets and cans of formula, their faces arranged into expressions of concern that did not fit properly, like suits borrowed from someone else's closet. Naomi opened the door. She did not step aside. "We came to bring you home," Dorothy said. Her voice was Sunday service sweet, pitched high, and practiced. "A baby needs her daddy." Naomi looked at her. "You told Marcus a girl wasn't worth keeping. Do you remember that?" Dorothy's smile cracked at the edges like old plaster. Marcus stepped forward. "Naomi, let's go inside. Let's talk like adults. Say what you need to say right here." Dorothy sat down on the porch steps. She slapped her thighs and wailed, "Lord have mercy. She's throwing me out. After everything I've done for this family." Across the street, a neighbor pulled back a curtain, held it, let it drop. And then a man's voice came from inside the house, calm, unhurried. "Everything okay, Naomi?" Elijah Brooks walked into the doorway. He was holding a bottle of warm milk he had heated without being asked. He wore a plain t-shirt and sweatpants, and the easy posture of a man who knew where the bottles were kept. He looked at Marcus the way you look at a stranger who has knocked on the wrong door. "Who the hell is this?" Marcus whispered. Naomi did not answer. She did not need to. The house behind her was clean. The baby on her hip was fed. The man in the doorway was holding a warm bottle he had prepared without being asked. The answer was in every detail of the room. Marcus's face went through 3 stages in 4 seconds. Shock, fury, then something that looked like the last light going out behind a window nobody would open again. "So that's what this is," he said. "You already had someone lined up." "No," Naomi said. "I had someone who showed up." Dorothy scrambled to her feet. "This is shameful. You hear me? Shameful. Go home, Dorothy. I'm his mother." "You can't go home." And then Amara, who had been quiet the entire time, watching the scene from her mother's hip with eyes that tracked movement the way children track things they are trying to understand, looked at Marcus. She studied his face for 2 full seconds. She did not smile. She did not reach. She turned her head toward Elijah, pointed one small finger, and said a single word. Daddy. Clear as morning. One word from a child who had no argument prepared, no side to choose, no loyalty owed to anyone except the person who smelled like safety and warm milk at 3 in the morning. She chose the man who showed up. Marcus did not move. His mouth was open, but nothing came out. Dorothy grabbed his arm and pulled him down the porch steps. Their shoes scraped the concrete where the magnolia roots had cracked it years ago. A car door slammed. An engine started. The street was quiet again. The apartment was smaller than the townhouse. 2 bedrooms and a brick walk-up off Memorial Drive, south side of Atlanta. The floors were original hardwood scuffed, warm, and loud in all the right places. Elijah had found it through a coworker who was relocating to Charlotte. The rent was reasonable. The light was good. The kitchen window faced a small courtyard with a crepe myrtle tree that bloomed pink in the summer. Naomi painted Amara's room the color of a peach sky, the specific shade that appears at the horizon 10 minutes before sunset, when the day hasn't ended yet but the night is already on its way. Cloud-shaped nightlight on the dresser. A stuffed rabbit with one ear longer than the other, propped against the pillow. Amara called it Bun and would not sleep without it. The living room had a window that faced east. Every morning, the sun came in at an angle that made the floor look like warm honey. Naomi would sit there with her coffee before Amara woke up, looking at nothing in particular, breathing in and out, feeling the specific weight of a life that belonged entirely to her. She went back to work 4 months after the ruling. A marketing firm in Buckhead, smaller than her old agency, but the people were good and the work was steady. She studied for a professional certification on nights and weekends, at the kitchen table, after Amara went to sleep. Elijah took Amara to the park on Saturday mornings, so Naomi could have the apartment to herself. He packed the diaper bag without being asked wipes, snacks, sippy cup, sunscreen, the rabbit. He had no children of his own. He had never done this before. He did it like he'd been doing it his whole life. You're spoiling her, Naomi said once, watching him zip up Amara's jacket with the patience of a man who had nowhere else to be. That's the plan, he said. She passed the certification exam on a Thursday in November. Denise Walker sent a bottle of wine and a card that read, "Told you so." Robert Carter said nothing on the phone when Naomi called to tell him, but Lorraine later said he'd gone to the backyard and stood by the magnolia tree for a long time, looking up at the branches. And when he came inside, his eyes were red. Elijah's parents lived in Savannah. His mother was a retired school librarian. His father taught Sunday school and kept a vegetable garden. They met Naomi on a Saturday in December. His mother hugged her at the door before she'd taken off her coat. His father shook her hand and said, "So you're the one." At dinner, Amara pointed at Elijah and said, "Daddy Moore." His mother looked at Naomi. "She's perfect. She's a handful. Same thing." 2 weeks before the wedding, Marcus had called from a new number. "Can I ask you something? Can you send me a picture of Amara?" Naomi stood at the kitchen window. "No. You chose to give her up, Marcus. In a coffee shop. Out loud. You don't get to choose your way back in when it's convenient." She hung up. They married on the spring equinox, March 21st. The ceremony was small. 30 people. Naomi wore a satin dress, simple cut, no train. Robert walked his daughter down the aisle. His back was straighter than it had been in years. When he handed her to Elijah, he looked the younger man in the eye and held his gaze for 3 full seconds. He did not speak. He did not need to. Amara was the flower girl. She wore a white dress with a tulle skirt and a crown of daisies that kept sliding over one eye. She walked down the aisle holding a basket of petals, dropping them in clumps rather than scattering them, and when she reached the front, she looked up at Elijah and said, "Daddy, I'm done." And the entire room laughed, the kind of laughter that comes from a place deeper than humor. On a Sunday afternoon in April, Naomi unpacked the last box in the new apartment's bedroom closet. In the bottom, wrapped in a pillowcase that smelled like her mother's house, she found the Maroon Samsonite. She set it on the top shelf. She opened it. Empty. She closed it. She ran her thumb across the brass latch, the one that stuck if you didn't lift and press at the same time. The latch caught, held, and locked with a click that sounded nothing like the click of Dorothy's purse clasp, and everything like the sound of a door that would not need to open again. That evening, the three of them sat on the living room floor, eating takeout from paper containers. Amara had rice in her hair. Elijah was trying to teach her to say spaghetti, and she kept saying sketty and laughing at herself. And each time she laughed, Elijah laughed, and each time Elijah laughed, Naomi felt something loosen in her chest that had been tight for longer than she could name. The window was open. Spring air came in, warm and green-smelling, carrying the faint sweetness of the crepe myrtle and the sound of someone's radio 2 floors down playing a song she almost recognized. The maroon suitcase sat on its shelf in the dark closet, latched shut, holding nothing. It was not needed anymore. It was not going anywhere. It had carried everything it would ever carry, and now it was just a suitcase, scuffed, brass-latched, and finally still. There is a verse I come back to every time I hear a story like this one. Be not deceived, God is not mocked. For whatsoever a man soweth, that shall he also reap. Galatians 6-7. Marcus Thompson sowed a postnuptial agreement built on a lie and reaped a courtroom full of evidence. He sowed 42 nights of silence and reaped a daughter who did not know his name. The harvest always comes. It just doesn't always come when you're ready. But here is the question I need you to sit with tonight. How many bottles have you heated alone at 3 a.m. while someone who promised to love you slept 10 feet away? And how many times did you tell yourself that was just what strength looked like? That enduring in silence was the same as being strong? Because there is a difference between being strong and being silent. And sometimes the strongest thing a woman can do is not hold the family together, but hold herself together long enough to walk out the door. 42 nights. That was Naomi's number. What's yours? Tell me in the comments. Not the answer that makes you look good. The real one. Next week, the story of a boy pulled from foster care who was handed an empire. Morehouse, Wharton, a corner office, a G-Wagon in the driveway. And when the woman who gave him everything asked for nothing in return, he tried to steal it all anyway. The moment Diana Washington poured that wine across his demands, you are going to want to hear this one. Subscribe so it finds you.